welcome everybody. My name is Logan, and this is Decode Your Reality. Today I have a very special guest, very good friend of mine, very close friend of mine, John Robert Pitre IV, coming live to you from Mississippi. I got that right, John, right?
Yeah.
That's right. Armour, Mississippi, which kind of interesting with the latitude, longitude, the coordinates there.
Yeah.
But anyway, I wanted to bring John on as a special guest, and I wanted to talk about the numbers 9, 6, and 6, 9. For those of you that know my work, I can tell you that John was the influence of these numbers that I really have kind of dived into, and it just won't let me go. But John is to thank for that, because he's the man who really introduced me to those numbers. And, you know, I give credit where credit's due. So, John, welcome to the show, brother. I really appreciate you taking the time out to join us tonight.
Well, thank you, man. Thanks for having me. The 6 and the 9, yeah.
Absolutely. So why don't you start off by telling everybody what you just told me before we started the broadcast here, 6 days of creation and then the 9th day and whatnot, and what those numbers link up to, because those are important, I think.
Right. Well, you know, 6 is the first perfect number, whatever that would mean mathematically, but it's mathematically the first perfect number. You'll find it all through, like, the top of the Masonic arch. It's an electromagnetic attraction, those two, and it's almost an intelligent attraction. It's almost an intelligent magnetism, because it seems to come out in the speech that we do. If you was to do the simple English gematria of the number 216, it equals 144. And there's no reason that that should be. I mean, those two numbers, like let's just say in the alphabet, you have M as the 13th letter, and W, its opposite, as the 23rd letter. Well, 13 is the 6th prime number, and 23, which is W's place in the alphabet, is the 9th prime number. And M will flip to make W just as 6 will flip to make 9, you know. And I think that's some kind of, I'm not really sure if it was ever planned that way. This is a magnetism that's, to me, from what I've seen, is intelligent. We've seen it in the Masonic arch as the cancer sign right above the like George Washington's head, when we see the images of him. But I'm starting to wonder if that arch is an arch at all, but instead a magnet. Because we've, you know, the old cartoons with the U-shaped magnet and all that. I think that's the same thing. The pillars, in my opinion, are only, the pillar only exists and the arch only exists due to the 6 and 9. The sun being the 6th Sephiroth, the moon being the 9th. Gosh.
That's really interesting that you say you know, when I picked up on that, I'm taking notes as we go along, but W is the 23rd letter in the English, and it's the 9th prime number. And
right.
Interestingly enough, the W is related to the element tungsten on the periodic table, because it has the W as its symbol, or its abbreviation. And of course, tungsten's proton number is 74.
Wow.
Yeah, and of course, we both know Jesus and Lucifer equal 74 in the English ordinal.
Right, and you know, all the gematrias, like of names like Jesus and stuff. If you look in each category, let's say Jewish gematria or English gematria or any of those, they all come back to the same two things, and that's the 6 and the 9. Mm-hmm. I personally would say that George Washington is seen standing on the checkered floor under the arch, because it shows a maintenance of the polarity between the two. It's hard to put into simple terms, but he's more or less standing as a figurehead of Father Time, or Saturn, as we know, because everything's reflecting off of Saturn. It's structure, it's everything, you know. It's along with other planets, but the 6 and 9 is it's very, very, it's the core of the Bible. I mean, there's two words in the whole Strong's Concordance, which is the translated version of the Bible, gives you all the translated definitions. There's only two words in there that sum up the whole book, and it's the Strong's number 144, which is perception and understanding, and it's Strong's number 216, which is light. And when you put them together, just the two words, the two definitions, it's a perception and understanding of the light. Well, if you add the numbers that are applied to those definitions, which are those translations, it's 360 degrees. It forms 144 plus 216. But if you multiply the two, the 144 and the 216, it gives you the total number of verses in the whole book, right? It goes deeper than that. It goes to the point of, you can take your sum, which is 360, or the circle, and you can divide it into the 31,104 verses of the square book, or squaring the circle, and you come up with 86.4, which gives you the exact seconds in one day. It gives you the diameter of the sun, 86.4, 864,000 miles, and it's absolutely brilliant how precise it all falls together. And it's all because of the 6 and 9. It's all because of that polarity between the two pillars.
Right.
And the pillars too are just figureheads to me. One pillar for me would be the sun, like I was saying, which is the 6th separo, and the other is the moon. But it's more than that. It's to me, the sun pillar would be the actual 3-4-5 triangle the Egyptians worship, because I mean, you can't have any substance in the world without light, and that's what gave it. That's what gives substance, is light. And and the moon would be in the other pillar. It gives us the observer, us, and our ability to observe. And we can only see anything because of the two, our ability to perceive, and the light that we're viewing the object under. So I personally, I've lost just about all track of everything else. I've been trying to decode it for, gosh, it's been several years.
You're talking about the 3-4-5 triangle, right?
Yes, all of it comes back to the 6 and 9, because look, we got, if you look at the Pythagorean theorem, as Mike can see it there, it's 3 squared plus 4 squared equals 5 squared.
Yep.
Well, that's that in the magic squares of King Solomon. Those squares would be the Saturn, Jupiter, and Mars square. And there's a 3x3, a 4x4, and a 5x5 square. Well, those squares sum up to, like, let's say the Mars square is 325 is the total. The Jupiter square is 136, and Saturn is 45. And if you take those 3 squares, which form the Pythagorean theorem, which is the basis of the triangle, you can subtract them one by one, starting with the highest, 325 minus 136 minus 45, and you get 144. And in three-dimensional space is a cube. And when we go up one step from the Pythagorean theorem, it becomes 3 cubed plus 4 cubed plus 5 cubed equals 6 cubed, which is 216. And it's everywhere I've seen throughout, even my own birth, even my own experiences in life have all come down to the 6 and the 9.
Yep.
And and to me, it's an intelligent magnetism that nobody has been able to explain.
Now, you mentioned the 3-4-5, and you mentioned Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn, and that's really interesting because in reality, Mercury is the first planet, Venus is the second, Mars is the third, Jupiter is the fourth, which runs the heart chakra, and Saturn is the fifth, which Saturn runs the throat chakra. We speak our spells, and you just mentioned the 3-4-5, and that's the order of those planets. That's really fascinating right there. And you see how those tie in to the chakra points and how they run our reality. And, you know, I've been saying it for a while. Saturn is really the big boy on the block because he's the blue planet, man. He runs all the spells. He's the maker of our bones and the taker of our bones and all that
Right.
kind of stuff. But it really just leads back to that 6-9 and 9-6 over and over. And, you know, like I said, I mean, you are to me, you're like, you're the Mr. Math guy. I mean, I don't know anybody probably as more brilliant as you are when it comes to the numbers. Like your memorization of these anomalies are completely it blows me away. And I've learned so much from you. And like I said, just the 9-6 and 6-9, I can take away all the other great things that you showed me through all of our ups and downs. Because as you know, John, you know, we've had our differences and whatnot. But in the end, we've always come back full circle. Yeah.
They follow the stars, you know. It's really remarkable, our relationship. You know, it's to me, man, you're a fantastic dude. I love the heck out of you.
I appreciate it. Well, much love to you. I'll let the viewers know the interesting part about you and I is that you know, our last names are off by one letter. Yours is Pitre, mine's Piet. So they have the P and the T in there and the E in there. The only thing I don't have is the R, which is kind of fascinating. And then our last names together, they equal the number 47.
Oh,
and the 47 is the Tetragrammaton. So, you know, it's really fascinating to me.
It's also the 15th prime number, which is the form of the Saturn square.
It's the form of the Saturn square. Exactly.
Yeah, the Saturn, the 3-4-5 is something. It's more than just the triangle. I mean, if you was going to look at Mars as a planet, even what we've been told, King Solomon devised a square for Mars, as brilliant and genius as he was, a 5 by 5. But when we look at Mars, they have it as Earth being the third rock from the sun, of course, and Mars being the fourth, and Jupiter is the fifth. But King Solomon made it a 5 by 5 square. Then it went from the 5 by 5 square, manifested from that two-dimensional square into a Sephiro, which was the fifth Sephiro, Gavura, which equals 216. Moses uttered the word, or he got the words to utter the 216-digit name from Gavura, right? And I think it's really something to look at as far as it being the fifth Sephiro and the 5 by 5 square, because if you look at the pictures that they've given us of Mars, I think it's the Egypt of the Bible personally. And the only reason I say that is because the face that they show us from Mars has an Egyptian headdress on it. The pyramids on Mars, and they're 5 by 5 pyramids. It reflects down on Earth, and it reflects on Earth as, for one, the God of War reflects down on us as the House of War, the Pentagon. Penta is 5. You know, it's 5 stories high. There's a lot of connection to Mars and all this. And to me, I would go out on a limb and say that Mars and the moon are one. And Trump, yeah, as crazy as it sounds, and they laughed at me at first when I said it, until Trump said something about the moon being a part of Mars. And they are, and it's still, and it brings it right on back to the 6 and 9, and that magnetism. The magnetism of the 6 and 9 is what's holding all of this together.
Yep.
It's very strange. It's something that's come on to me now as a physical project. You know, it's went from math as an idea and an observation to an actual physical thing. And it's all about the magnetism of the two, because if you look at all you got to do is look at our speech, and the way it was hidden, like the 216 Gematria, TWO, you know, spelling out 216, it equals 144. Or the fact that light equals 144 in Jewish Gematria, but yet in the Strong's translations, it's the number 216th word, you know, and it's a reflection. It's a magnetic reflection of what I would have to point to Saturn, which allows us to have that structure. You know, without the light, there's no structure that a human can put his hands on or taste or touch or feel. And we need those things to know that reality exists. And there's a great secret behind them, dude, that's coming. And I hope to be around, and I hope to be the one to bring it, because that's my dream. It's always been to relieve people of that electricity bill or things like that, you know, and that's where we're going to find it, is in that 6 and 9, the magnetic pull of both of them, and the never-ending magnetic attraction that's going to allow the free energy to take place.
Right. That's a nice bit of information that we hope will manifest, John, because that will relieve a lot of burdens for people in this world. Well, let me ask you, I mean, where do you think we're headed with everything, with this whole 9669? Let me digress real quick. I mean, I've shown, you've probably seen some of my work, you know, Jesus and Lucifer, when you break them down through alchemy, Jesus is 38, Lucifer is 58. Together, those equal the 96.096. So I have no doubt in my mind, in my opinion, that the 96.096 is kind of what runs this matrix reality and has a hold of it. You know, I have a feeling that the 96 is the root chakra of the matrix reality, and the heart chakra is the 99. But more importantly, I mean, how do you feel about the whole Jesus and Lucifer energies, you personally yourself?
Me personally, Jesus is such a powerful name, you know. I mean, it does, you know, and I'm almost to the point where thinking it's in our DNA. I mean, if you'll look at anybody throughout history, at the moment before they die, it's either, oh God, or Jesus Christ, you know, please save me. And those things are very important, because they're not embedded in our consciousness to the point where, you know, hey, I'm dying, I better say these things. But instead they come out. As far as the gematria for the name, I think you can't go wrong no matter which one you use, because even if you look at the Jewish version of Jesus, it's 985. Well, the prime factors for 985 are 5 and 197. That's the 3rd and 45th prime numbers. So you're coming right back to the 3, 4, 5 triangle. And of course, if you was to replace the prime factors, 5 and 197, with their values, 3 and 45, all you got to do is mirror it. 3, 4, 5 plus 5, 4, 3 is 888, and which gives you the gematria for the Greek version of Jesus. And it's all about reflections. And we live in a world of smoke and mirrors, and being able to recognize that reflection is a lot to it. I mean, it helps you navigate, because we're only seeing one part of it if we don't, you know. Just like Leonardo da Vinci and his art, you know, it was always showing a mirrored secret. And that part is, I think, yet to be discovered as far as us physically seeing it, but we're getting close with the math.
Yeah, that's interesting. You know, anybody out there listening to this broadcast, you know, one of the basic things of decoding that, you know, John, another one you had showed me is mirroring numbers and adding them together to get a final output. And I think it has a lot of relevance, because, you know, there's our side and then there's the other side.
Right.
And when you bring those two numbers together and you add them up, you get a total, and that'll give you an output, which you can then measure through pi, through alchemy, adding up the elements of the periodic table. There's a whole host of ways that you can do it. But if you're not using that and you're decoding, everybody that's listening, you should, whatever your final output is, you should mirror that number backwards and then get your total to see what kind of numbers you're coming up with, and keep track of that stuff, because that's where you're going to start to get your nuggets and start to be able to have some really strong points to share.
Yes, it's important. Even if you don't know the number, just whatever you come up with, just mirror it and put it on a file in your mind. Trust me, it's going to be well worth it later, because the mind, the math is only there for us to unlock our own minds.
Right.
And the whole universe is just there for us to measure anyway. It's just, are we not lazy, and are we going to measure it and carve our own way? And it's really important with the mirroring to be able to see what's being reflected, you know. It's like pi. we see the sequence 1776 begin right after the 888th decimal digit. And there you go, 888 plus its mirror, 888, is 1776. So there's something to it in creation. Now, I don't understand quite yet how it would work physically and what they would get out of it, but it works nonetheless, and there it is. That's why I'm up to the point where I put the boogeyman to the back burner, you know, and hey, it's not the Illuminati, you know. There's something else that's driving this, and for now, I can only guess that it's God. That's the only thing I can guess, and I'm not a religious person by no means, but I've seen enough evidence to know that men can't hide this,
Right.
and their ability for them to do so makes no sense for them to.
Yep.
You know.
Yep. Well, I firmly believe, and I've said this openly and honestly to everybody that was probably going to tune into this broadcast, that, you know, there's something that is beyond normal physical comprehension that's pulling the strings behind this matrix reality that runs it, which again, I believe is the 96.096. And I'm just titling that as the number, but I believe that thing runs the entire gamma. If you study Isaiah 45:7, I create darkness, I create light, evil and good. And then you go into a lot of other things, Romans 13:1, where it talks about the powers are ordained by God. So then we have to define God, because that's a broad stroke. But nonetheless, I believe that it I mean, you know, it's crazy how, like, I don't know if you saw my video on breaking down the movie John Wick, but I had one slide in there, which I'm going to splash up on the screen, but it was Keanu Reeves. His full name was Keanu Charles Reeves. And when you break that down alchemically, his name ends up being, I think, 143, which is linked to the element neodymium. And his name in the movie The Matrix is Neo. So it's like, how is this even possible? There's no way these writers are sitting down and they're doing numerology and doing alchemy like that. There's no way. So there has to be some divine behind it that's doing this. There's no other explanation for it.
Right. And I'll see a lot of times, a lot of friends, they say, well, I keep seeing this time on the clock, you know, or I keep seeing, you know, Walmart prices that seem to follow this matrix, you know, they must really be. It's not that, you know. Sometimes I wonder, we do have the Fibonacci sequence as evidence, and we see it all throughout nature, right? Yep. But we also can see it taking over the computer codes, like Walmart prices. You know, that's why the prices are like that, because just as it took over nature in its spiral, it's gathering up the cyber world as well, and it's wrapping it up in it as well. And that's why the prices, I think, are coming out like that. And to be honest with you, I think chaos only erupts when we disturb that flow. That's from what I've observed, and it's man doing it. I don't know how you could stop any of that, because I think it's gone on since the beginning of time. I think that's part of our problem, is interrupting it, and we just don't want to give credit where credit is due. And sometimes the credit does belong to a higher power, and not a nefarious group sitting in a dark room somewhere.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you, what do you think about now? You know, I know you're not religious at all, but you do study the Bible, the Strong's Concordance, which is another thing you threw my way. Anybody listening out there, Strong's Concordance, you should be looking up all your numbers with that, because that's absolutely mind blowing when you look at the connections. I mean, just you spitting out that 144 and 216. I'm gonna look those up in their Greek and Jewish names. I'm gonna decode those, and I'll give you credit for that. But what do you think about, you know, Revelations and talking about the trumpets being blown, which is, in my opinion, you know, Donald John Trump equals 66, Vice President Michael Richard Pence equals 66, 66 books of the Bible, Revelations the 66th book. What is your take on that? I mean, do you think that these guys were set up to be a part of the end times as we're looking at it through prophecy?
That's a great question, dude. It depends on how you view time, as for one. But they are. It's the math behind these characters is absolutely mind blowing. You mentioned the 66 books. Well, the sum of divisors for 66 is 144. So that's all the numbers that you can divide into 66. When you total them up, is 144, and it's insane. You know, it's crazy. As far as Trump, Man, it's I really dug into him. I mean, his grandmother's name, her maiden name is Elizabeth Christ. You know, I mean, she died on June 6th of 66. That's 6666. It's perfect. You know, it's all perfect. It's a whole string of perfect. The first perfect number. What he plays into his role, he's the founding father of something coming. And I'm not a Trump supporter by no means. I'm just telling you from what I know and what I've observed. He has to be in office for the year 2022. And there's a special birthday for Israel that year. It's an 888th birthday. But on Israel's birthday, he's also 911 months old. So there's a connection between the two. You know, I did a almanac for 2016 or 2017, excuse me. And I had the date December 12th. You know, all year, you know, I'm telling people, making connections to December 12th. And I'm like, you know, this could be something really big. And just like I was saying about Trump and Israel, well, on December 6th of 2017, Trump brought to the United Nations that he would recognize, and the United States would recognize Israel, Jerusalem as its capital. And there was a Trump and Israel connection right there. And it didn't pass. The UN decided that it wasn't going to recognize it on December 12th, 2017. And how that could be, I don't know. But I could tell you the formula I used to find it. And that was reflecting and date counting. And it was all about the 696, 969, and the reflection of the math and the dates. Now, and I went back all the way clean to his birth. You know, I got so many posts connecting him to events, you know, that he shouldn't be connected to. And they're pure mathematic events, but they're important nonetheless, because from my own observations, they manifest through that, and that's why they use it. It's like a.
You were, you know, speaking of those numbers, I had decoded Trump's tower, and I had used, for the height of Trump's tower, it's listed on Wikipedia at 664 stories.
Right.
Right. And, or is that right? So, or 664 feet tall or something like that. And then, you know, the numbers kind of matched out to some pretty interesting connections, but then you had shown me, like, you had saved it. Originally it was 666 feet tall.
Yeah, before he won, I caught it. I think everybody else said it's changed. And I said, no way. So I went back, and sure enough, they had changed it. But right at the beginning of his run, I was already into, you know, this type of project. So that was one of the first things I checked. You know, Trump Tower has got to be so many feet tall. And sure enough, it was 666 feet. And dude, I just tell you, I was blown away right then. Not to mention, you know, old Grandma Christ over here, you know, dying on 6/6 of 66. And it's just if somebody was to deny it, it would be a fool of them, because there's so much evidence now. It's no longer a conspiracy. It's evidence. And that's a good question.
It is. I really feel that these are the fingerprints that, you know, if we want to term the word God, it's the fingerprints of this, what's running this matrix reality. It's leaving its breadcrumbs behind. And literally we're this group of Hansel and Gretel's looking for the breadcrumbs as we walk through the forest.
Right.
Yeah. And, you know, that's what we're doing. You know, it's interesting because, you know, I want to shift now, because, you know, we're almost about out of time, but I want to shift now into kind of the decoding methods. I know, you know, you're a math guy. You use strictly math and prime numbers and, you know, triangular numbers and, you know, and Fibonacci and all that stuff. You know, there's a lot of these decoders out there, especially, you know, like Zach Hubbard. He's done a lot of great things for the world when it comes to sports and all that kind of stuff. I give him credit on that aspect right there. But, you know, and it's funny because now he has his show, and behind him there's a license plate, and it's got the 47 on there. And I don't think he has a really conscious clue of what it really means. He just obviously flashes that up. But you have a lot of these decoders out there. They're just linking numbers together with the breakdown of numerology, and they think, you know, they're using these a million different ciphers, and, you know, it's so easy to find connections when you're using all these million different ciphers. But if you just stop there you know, what value are you bringing to the decoding world? You know, I mean, what is your take on that?
My take is you're watering you're watering it down when you do that, because if you're a novice, if you're just getting into this and you've had that spark where you see somebody else's post or math and you say, wait a minute, there's something going on. It is not going to help you to be swamped with all these different meanings to or sums to a word you're looking up, because you're already just new to the game. You don't know any idea of what all these numbers mean, and there has to be one of them that's going to matter, or maybe two of them that's going to matter, and the two will always connect either way. But if you're new to this, it's not helpful at all. My decoding, my tactic when I approach this, and even if it's gematria, I won't use his gematrinator, but I'll use another one, and I'll go and I'll find the simple English, which is the language I would use, the simple English sum of that word, or the Jewish, or the English, the English times 6 or whatever it is, a equals 6, and I'll get the number. But if the number is not something I recognize, what I'll do instantly is I got a website I go to, it's a Number Empire.
Number Empire, yep.
Yeah, and I'll punch in the number I want to look up, and it'll give me all the different ways you can look at that number's personality.
Yep.
Because the number has a history.
Yep.
And the history is hidden within its structure, you know, and it's maybe in its square root. It may be in its hexadecimal number. It may be in any kind of way that you can break the number down, but that's no different than looking at somebody's ancestral history. To me, you have to look at that, and gematria is just one step. It's just a beginner's step to getting into something really, really beautiful, and it's time. But the next thing I would do is, if I got into measuring time and events or things like that, I use a date calculator. I punch in my date, like my event date, where something happened. Let's say 9/11, and let's say I wanted to make a connection to a World War or something. You know, I would punch in the World War date, and what it will give you is different ways that the time manifested. It may be in weeks, months, or days. And as far as recognizing a number, we have enough evidence already of Illuminati numbers or sacred numbers, like in the Bible, and those things. So when somebody does get lucky and hits that eureka, when they find something, that's theirs, you know, and it's special. And Zach and Emma, I think they've done some good work. They've lent no credit to 33, but you know, they're for the most part. Well, I mean, yeah. Well, for the most part, they've got the boogeyman.
Yeah.
They say, hey, here's 6. It equals 666. That's it, folks. Everybody go home. It's the devil. You know, that's it. We already know, and that's it, and that's that. Well, they need to step through that, you know, and put that devil behind them to understand why it's that. Like the 33. You know, if they really looked at Freemasonry, well, not many Freemasons even know this, but 33 is not only just a Freemason code. It's God's code through 7 as completion. I mean, if you took the first 7 Fibonacci numbers and total them up, it's 33. G is the 7th letter, so that is exactly what the G means, and the 33, because you don't complete Freemasonry until you reach the 33rd degree. And beyond that is the 34th, which is Knights Templar. So you're complete with Freemasonry at the 33rd degree, just like the first 7 numbers, just like the letter G. And it goes on, you know.
What's really interesting about that, the Knights Templar and the 34th, you know, if you take the word God and you know, now we go back to Hebrew, they didn't use vowels. So we eliminate the O and you have just the G and D. And in Chaldean, it's the 34, right? Which is 7, which is the solar plex chakra and the heart chakra. But Knights Templar in Chaldean, that equals the number 50, and the 50th element is tin, and that's related to Saturn. And you know that element has an atomic weight. Its most natural abundant weight is 119, which is the mirror of the 911.
10 would be Jupiter. And it matters because of skull and bones and the name Thor. Have you ever seen the original bones and Thor etched on it? Thor is Jupiter. Jupiter is the expansion over. It's what's got us greedy, you know. In my opinion, Jupiter's a bombastic, arrogant bastard. You know, it's that's why the Maya called him number 9, because he doesn't give anything back that's not 9. It's just like the number 9. If you use to multiply 1 times 9 is 9, or you know, it always comes back to 9. Whereas any other number, it kind of releases it and it goes on with its flow. It's interesting though, but the Jupiter square equaling 34 in the column, 34 is the 9th Fibonacci number. I just find that interesting. But Saturn would have been 13 to the Maya.
Unbelievable, man. The connections that you've just blurted out, man. Well, dude, I really appreciate you coming on and sharing all of your amazing knowledge, dude. To me, you're a genius, John, and I can't thank you enough for all the things you've done for me.
Oh, thank you, man.
You know, and I know we got a lot more to share.
Oh yeah.
From here on out, you know. But I really thank you for your time, your service to this whole decoding thing, because I know, you know, hey, you don't make any, this is not a monetary thing for you.
No,
as it is for me. You know, it's a very expensive hobby. It's a very expensive habit because it sucks up your time. And
it's gonna be worth it.
It's totally worth it, of course. But as you know, they say the craft, there's no monetary aspect that should be attached to that craft, because this is free information that we're sharing and whatnot. Sometimes, I mean, charging for it, people do that, but, through literature and whatnot, they put their time in. But overall, I mean, I'm very grateful for the work that you've put into this decoding world, because it's really,
likewise,
you've amassed some amazing information.
Well, thank you very much, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah, man. Thank you so much. And I really appreciate any last words that you'd like to send out to the audience that's listening out there? Any parting words?
Well, just one. Go to Genesis 3:21 and see that it's about God giving us skin. And then go to Strong's and look at the number 1321. It means flesh. There's no reason those two should be connected, but yet it's book 1, chapter 3, verse 21. And there's a connection there that I feel like God gave me because I couldn't read the book. I couldn't get into it. So that connection kind of clears up a little confusion maybe some people have, and they should go check it out.
Fascinating. I love it. Well, thank you for the words of wisdom, my friend. For John Robert Pitre IV, my name is Logan. This is Decode Your Reality. We appreciate you watching. Till next time, everybody.